about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host here this morning. Glad to have you on board. If you're catching us live on our website, that's great news. I see a ton of you folks out there all over the upper Midwest. I see Chicago's out there, Baltimore. I see Springfield, Missouri, which is kind of close to me. I see Medford, Oregon. I see Seattle area. I see Florida out there, Texas out there, Southwest. Not quite sure what state that's in. Glad to have you guys out there listening to us this morning. If you'd like to participate in the program, you can give us a call on our new phone line services, which have been provided for us by Patriot FB Radio. You can call us at our phone line, our listener call-in line at 573-453-5505. In this segment this morning, we're going to be talking about the federal land takeover for the new national monument that was designated by Obama on Wednesday, declaring 500,000 acres. 500,000 acres, folks. And here's the problem. It butts up right against the Mexico border, and he's declaring it as a national monument. Now, this will make this the largest swath of land to be set aside for that purpose since he took office. And here's the problem. The environmentalists are cheering and jumping up and down in glee. The problem is that everybody else in the country is worried about a couple of things. One, that will completely and permanently shut this property down from any access for anything that would resemble the nation's natural resources that are on that property, including natural gas, oil, mineral deposits, and what have you. Two, because it's right up against the border, it can't be patrolled. In other words, it can be patrolled right on the border's edge itself. But inland is where the problem is. And this is such a huge area. Your border patrol will be limited and blocked from being able to have access to it. The states themselves will not be able to patrol it. Private citizens won't be able to gain access to it. So essentially, it's going to become the massive hidey hole for tens of thousands of illegal immigrants violating our borders. It's willful, it's intentional, and it's inexcusable that he's doing this. Not to mention the fact that the push is on all over the nation to free up all of this land that's already under control of the federal government. For the record, and we just dealt with this with the Bundy Ranch issue, 84% of the state of Nevada is federally owned. What? I mean, that's insane. The federal government is prohibited and barred by the Constitution itself, ladies and gentlemen, from ownership of land outside of the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C. And tiny isolated islands, tiny, for forts, magazines, and things like military bases and post offices and stuff like that. That's it. You can't own, you don't need 500 million acres. I'm sorry, 500,000 acres. I apologize. 500,000 acres. Law enforcement is all upset about this, as they should be, because they'll be barred from having access to use it and to patrol it and identify where the threat is on a national security basis. I am so tired of hearing government say, oh, it's a national security matter. It's a big secret. We can't talk to you about it because it's national security. Meanwhile, they're doing anything and everything they can to undermine our national security, not only internationally, but domestically. Harry Reid came out yesterday and said Obama is likely to have to, and it was that was his way of pointing it out, have to bypass Congress on immigration because it can't get done. He came out and said Obama may have to act on immigration. Well, let me tell you something, America. You and I can consider this to be a terroristic threat, and that's a legal term. Harry Reid made a terroristic threat to the United States of America because what he did is he encouraged the President of the United States to act outside the constitutionally prohibited boundaries of his office to break the law. And not only is he advocating that the president do, he's telling Congress to do so too. And he betrayed his nation, all in a single statement. His removal from office, at a minimum, should be our only response. The truth of the matter is, folks, if you're not at this stage in the game cognizant of the level of treason and betrayal, not just by the Obama administration and the ideologues on the left, but the ideologues on the right too. What do I mean by that? I mean, how many of these people in elected roles as representatives of the conservative party are working against you? It's not limited just to the issues of immigration, although many of them are on board with that too, including John Boehner. He's just trying to figure out a way he can do it without getting lynched. You see, I mean, that is the problem, folks. He's trying to figure out a way to do it without getting lynched. They're talking about they have to do this by sometime this summer, between June and August, because they got to get it done before the midterm. Now, what's even more stunning and amazing to me is that they're doing this under pressure from these illegal alien groups that, I mean, exist here in the country, and we don't even do anything to kick them out. I mean, there's no real focus on enforcement of any kind, and even when that enforcement, you know, the president's been lying to us saying he's the number one deporter in chief and all that crap. Well, let me tell you something. It's all of that. It's all human excrement, lies to you, and it pours out of his mouth like water out of a bucket. Reid the other day went out there to a group, and there are a couple of groups that are specifically addressing this issue and saying that we better do what they tell us. And these are groups of illegals operating within our own country. I mean, listen, folks, this is the equivalent of having a burglar stand in your living room who is ordering you and telling you what you better do while breaking the law after you've given him tea and cookies, trying to be nice. Dick Durbin came out and backed him up. Said he's spoken to Obama about halting deportations and presented him with documents outlining the case and his legal authority to do so. He said he didn't know whether the administration lawyers would agree with his analysis. I believe he has the capacity to move further in executive orders and administrative action to protect innocent people from deportation. That was Dick Durbin. That's it, right out of the horse's mouth. You see, we have senators, we have congressmen, we have elected, unelected, accountable, unaccountable individuals in the country who are making public statements of treason. Public statements of treason, folks. Why so harsh a word? Because you're violating the Constitution. It can't be considered anything else. The end result of constantly violating the constitutional prohibitions against importation or against the illegal immigration issue and all these other things that they've done, that when you break the Constitution, it's not just a misdemeanor. It's high crimes. High crime. What is a high crime? A high crime is not a big crime. A high crime is misusing your high power of office. And treason is defined as high crimes and misdemeanors. Trying to destroy your own nation. Seeking to overthrow. Well, what is this? What has this become other than a coup? Is this not a coup? Are we not living under one? No, it wasn't abrupt as the one in Thailand the other day, where the military started driving around in tanks right down the middle of the city street. But Thailand, let's not forget, isn't the size of Florida. People. We have a Senate Majority Leader who just came out and gave us all the evidence we need to convict him of a criminal act of a terroristic threat, to convict him of breaking the Constitution. At minimum, that's a felony, people. At minimum, it's a felony. And he's advocating and inciting criminal activity on the part of someone else. These are high crimes. This federal land takeover will assist and extend the participation of the violation of our borders, which is the goal. They want it. Boehner comes out and says, once again, the president has chosen to bypass the legislative branch. You just said it, John. Do something about it. Listen. People, don't you see how out of hand this is? Don't you realize and recognize how far this has gone? I mean, I wouldn't trust Boehner to tell me what the time of day was if I was wearing 3 watches and he was wearing 10. But he hits the nail on the head. Once again, the president has chosen to bypass the legislative branch. That's all you need to hear. He goes on to say other things, and I'll read them to you. But that in and of itself is an indictment. He says, and in this case, doing so in a manner that adds yet another challenge in our ongoing efforts to secure the southern border. At a time of continued cartel violence in Mexico, we should not be putting any additional restraints on efforts to protect our borders. By turning this Oregon Valley or Oregon Mountain Monument into a national monument and essentially blocking access to the property. Listen, even the Huffington Post is not 100% behind this thing. Half a million acres in southern New Mexico. As if, I don't remember the percentage of New Mexico that's under federal ownership, but it's like 60-something%. Now it's going to jump to what, 68, 70, 75? I don't know. The Oregon Mountains Desert Peaks National Monument near Las Cruces will be the largest monument as Obama has designated so far during his presidency. Jay Carney says the designation will help generate $7.4 million in revenue from tourism. Are we that desperate now that we're selling half a million acres for $7.4 million in ad revenue or in tourist revenue? You got to be kidding me. No, it has nothing to do with that. That's just the way to get people to sell it and let the government steal from you. Don't you realize that this is the equivalent of eminent domain on a statewide scale? Go back and read the 10th Amendment again and again and again and again and again. Print it out, carry it with you, and read it. The federal government is prohibited constitutionally from owning land. What more don't you need to know about, or what more do you need to know? They're going to create a buffer zone for law enforcement. A buffer zone. You think the illegals who are pouring over our border in staggering numbers care about buffers? No, they look at this as a hidey hole, a place where law enforcement can't get to us. They're prohibited from coming here. What are we doing? Ceding 500 million or 500,000 acres, 500,000 acres back to Mexico? Because that's what it sounds like to me. We're giving 500,000 acres back to Mexico because it's right on the border. This will become what? Old Mexico light? New Mexico given back? I don't get it. I mean, the county sheriff in the area recalled the times his deputies and federal agents were shot at as they pursued suspected drug smugglers in this area. He talked about stolen cars used to ferry drugs through the desert and past the Border Patrol checkpoints. He says, this is Todd Garrison, the county sheriff. He says, if we have no ability to patrol that area, crime is going to increase. It will be akin to the Organ Pipe National Monument in Arizona. I wonder how many years it will be before we have to post signs that say, enter at your own risk. Rob Bishop from Utah sent a letter asking Obama to refrain from establishing this monument. He said that the legislation should be allowed to work its way through Congress and allowing border security concerns to be addressed first. You see, the president was never intended to have this much authority and power, folks. Steve Pierce, he's the Republican in the congressional district that's covered by this area. He proposed a designation of 55,000 acres, not 500,000 acres. He said years of work went into developing a plan that would be acceptable to ranchers, business owners, sportsmen, conservationists, the liberals, the liberal environmental extremists, and everything else. And Obama ignored that, quote, with a stroke of a pen. Their main argument for doing this is that it will generate $7.4 million in economic activity from visitors and business opportunities. And the designation could lead to more federal funding and staffing for the Bureau of Land Management and the Border Patrol that enforces rules throughout the area. Bunk. So what you're saying is it's going to generate $7.4 million in economic activity from visitors and business opportunities, which you're promptly going to spend 3 times that expanding the Bureau of Land Management, who again has no constitutional authority to exist, and then you're going to pump some more money into Border Patrol that will be wasted because we're not patrolling the border anyway, and even when we catch them, we're not doing anything with them. Folks, listen, I'm all for clean water. I'm all for clean air. I'm all for having limited access to certain pieces of property that, have historical or aesthetic or some kind of value. But it shouldn't be done by the federal government. It's that simple. The federal government has no right and or place and or authority and or power to give itself the authority to do that. None. And every time we allow this to happen, every time we allow it to go through, every time we don't mutiny as a nation, we empower them to come back and do even more, act even worse, commit greater atrocities against us and the nation. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about Secretary of Defense Hagel admits the New World Order is being built. I mean, you got to be kidding me, folks. You're going to hear it out of the horse's mouth. And I'm just sick to death of the whole mess. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Before we go, if you have an opportunity, there's a couple places I'd like you to go and visit. One is atlassurvivalshelters.com. That's atlassurvivalshelters.com. Or you can go to facebook.com/atlassurvivalshelters. They produce a survival shelter that can be buried in the ground. And if you're looking for something like this for your family where you can put it on a piece of land, either within the property where you live or exist or some piece you own, it's a great opportunity. They have units that range in price from, $20,000 or $30,000 on up to luxury units that cost 5 times that. They'll bury them in the ground for you, where you and your family can store and protect and prepare for any kind of a natural disaster. About the only thing these things won't withstand is a flood, because they're underground. Hello. But I know the fellow who runs this business, and he's a good man, and he's got a great product out there. So, if you're interested, survivalbypreparedness.com. That's Survival by Preparedness, has some products out there. They also have some natural grass-fed beef services that you can get, and they ship across the country. And grass-fed beef is good for you. It's natural without any nonsense and additives and so forth and so on there. Make sure that you visit our friends over at Battery Station at batterystation.com. Make sure that you see our friends over at Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut is a supporter of this program. And, I know that this program gets distributed across the country, so it's not just local. But the Pizza Hut here in our area has been a major, major supporter of our program. So if you're in the West Plains area, there's one on Porter Wagoner Boulevard, and I would really encourage you to go in there. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, they have a reduced lunch special. On Tuesday night, it's kids under 12 eat free, and it's family night. And so they have a salad bar and a pizza bar and pasta bar and all kinds of things. Just a great place to grab a quick lunch or a nice inexpensive dinner with the family. And if you happen to go to Pizza Hut here, make sure that you let them know that Mike from America's Voice Now sent you over there, and they'll be happy to take great care of you. All of the servers in that place know me, and they will take exceptional care of you. We're going to take a break. When we get back, we'll cover this issue about Secretary of Defense Hagel admits the New World Order is being built as we speak. Stop denying the reality, folks. You can only hide your head in the sand or in your for so long. We'll be right back.